Driving home after work, lawyer Maya is pulled over by Officer Miller for a supposedly broken taillight. Despite Maya's compliance, Miller escalates the situation with condescending remarks, fabricates resisting arrest, and handcuffs her. Maya spends the night in jail. The next day in court, Maya's lawyer presents evidence proving the taillight was not broken, and body cam footage reveals Miller's abusive behavior. The judge dismisses the charges against Maya and orders an internal investigation into Miller, delivering Maya a sense of vindication and a small victory against injustice. The city lights blurred into streaks of color as Maya drove. The radio a low hum of jazz, soothing after a long day at the law firm. Just another Thursday night, heading back to her quiet apartment, reviewing case notes in her head. Then, the rearview mirror exploded with the pulsing glare of red and blue. Her heart gave a thump, but she immediately signaled and pulled over, checking her mirrors, triple-checking her speed. Everything seemed normal. Officer K. Miller, name tag gleaming silver under the streetlights, approached her window. He was broad-shouldered, with a square jaw and eyes that didn't quite meet hers as he spoke. "License and registration, ma'am." His voice was flat, official. Maya complied smoothly, her movements practiced from years of similar encounters. She handed over the documents, her voice calm. "Officer, is there a problem?" He took the documents, his eyes scanning them slowly, deliberately. "Broken taillight, ma'am. Driver's side." Maya frowned. She'd just had her car serviced last month. "That's odd. I'll need to get that checked first thing in the morning." "Odd, is it?" He leaned closer, a smirk playing on his lips. "Or maybe you just don't care about maintaining your vehicle, Ms. Johnson?" Maya stiffened. The casual dismissal of her name, the insinuation. "Officer, I assure you, I'm very diligent about my car's maintenance." He ignored her statement, his smirk widening. "Step out of the vehicle, please." Confusion warred with a prickle of unease. "Officer, I'm not sure I understand. For a taillight, step out of the vehicle, please," he repeated, the politeness gone, replaced by a harder edge. Reluctantly, Maya unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped onto the curb. The night air felt suddenly colder, the jazz from her car now a mocking soundtrack. He circled her car slowly, exaggerating his examination of the rear light. "Yep," he drawled. "Plain as day, broken taillight." He pointed with a thick finger, but Maya couldn't see anything obviously wrong. Then came the questions, escalating quickly. Where was she going? Where had she been? Had she been drinking? Each question sharper, more accusatory than the last. His tone dripped with condescension, his eyes lingering on her, assessing, dismissing. Maya answered calmly, truthfully, her lawyerly training kicking in even as her stomach churned with growing anger. But it wasn't enough. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back," Miller instructed, his voice now devoid of any pretense of civility. "Officer, are you arresting me?" Disbelief colored her voice. "For a taillight? Resisting," he snapped, before she even finished the sentence. "Resisting lawful arrest." The handcuffs were cold, biting into her wrists, tightened far beyond what was necessary. He walked her to his cruiser, his hand heavy on her arm, his smirk a silent victory in the flashing lights. At the station, the booking process was rushed, impersonal. He watched her, that same smirk flickering around his lips, as if enjoying some private joke. She was processed, fingerprinted, and placed in a holding cell, the clanging metal door echoing the hollowness in her chest. Sleep was impossible. Anger, frustration, and a deep sense of injustice kept her awake, churning in her mind. She knew this wasn't about a taillight. It was about power, about control, about her. The next morning, the courtroom felt different. The sterile wood and muted tones were familiar territory. But today, she wasn't there representing a client. She was the defendant, the woman in handcuffs just hours before. She sat at the defense table, her own lawyer, a colleague and friend, David beside her, his hand a comforting pressure on her arm. Miller entered the courtroom, his swagger from the previous night seemingly still intact. He walked confidently to the witness stand, raising his hand to swear to tell the truth. But as he settled himself, Maya noticed a flicker of something in his eyes, unease. He glanced at the judge, Judge Thompson, a stern, no-nonsense woman known for her sharp legal mind. He glanced at the prosecutor, Ms. Rodriguez, known for her meticulous preparation and relentless questioning. And then, his eyes flickered to Maya, sitting calmly at the defense table. Something shifted in his posture. His confidence seemed to waver, just slightly, but noticeably. Ms. Rodriguez led the prosecution smoothly, laying out the facts. The traffic stop, the broken taillight or lack thereof. Then came the exhibits. Photographs, taken by Maya's lawyer that morning, of her taillights, both functioning perfectly. Car repair invoices, dated just weeks prior, showing a full vehicle inspection, including lights, all marked as passing. Officer Miller, Ms. Rodriguez's voice was clear, sharp. You stated under oath that you pulled Ms. Johnson over for a broken taillight. Are you still maintaining that position in light of this evidence? Miller stammered, shifting in his seat. Well, it must have fixed itself? Maybe it was intermittent. Judge Thompson leaned forward, her gaze laser-focused. Officer, are you suggesting that a taillight can spontaneously repair itself between a traffic stop at 10 p.m. and this morning? Silence hung heavy in the courtroom. Miller's face flushed. Then came the body cam footage. Ms. Rodriguez played excerpts, highlighting Miller's condescending remarks, the escalating aggression, the unnecessarily tight handcuffs. Maya watched it again, a cold fury rising within her, even as a sense of grim satisfaction began to bloom. Judge Thompson watched intently, her expression impassive, but Maya could see a tightening around her mouth. Finally, it was Maya's turn. David kept his questions concise, letting her tell her story calmly, directly. She described the fear she'd felt, the humiliation, the injustice. She spoke about how a routine drive home had turned into a terrifying ordeal, all because of a fabricated infraction. Ms. Johnson, David asked, his voice gentle but pointed, did you feel, at any point during this encounter, that Officer Miller's actions were motivated by anything other than a concern for public safety? Maya looked directly at Officer Miller, who avoided her gaze, staring at his hands. Her voice was steady, unwavering. No, I did not. I believe Officer Miller's actions were motivated by prejudice and a desire to intimidate and demean me. I believe he abused his power, and he weaponized his badge against me. The courtroom was silent, every eye on Maya. Judge Thompson cleared her throat. Officer Miller, she said, her voice cold. Do you have anything further to add? Miller mumbled something about protocol and procedure, his voice barely audible, his bravado completely evaporated. Judge Thompson didn't need further testimony. She looked at Maya, her gaze softening almost imperceptibly. Ms. Johnson, the charges against you are dismissed. And Officer Miller, she turned her sharp gaze back to the witness stand. Your conduct in this case is deeply concerning. This court will be recommending a full internal affairs investigation into your actions. Court is adjourned. As Maya walked out of the courtroom, David at her side, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. It wasn't just vindication. It was more than that. It was a small crack in the wall of injustice, a moment where the truth, meticulously presented and powerfully spoken, had prevailed. She knew this was just one battle, but today, in this courtroom, she had stood her ground, and she had won. And in winning, she had spoken not just for herself, but for every woman, every person who had been subjected to that same chilling abuse of power. The drive home that night was still under city lights, but this time, the jazz from her car was a triumphant melody.